Elena had always prided herself on her realistic view of life, never indulging in fantasies of grandeur or the whims of fleeting passions. As a seasoned street painter in the bustling streets of New York City, she found comfort in the predictable rhythm of her daily routine, laying out her canvas early each morning on the same lively corner of Central Park, where the constant flow of tourists and locals provided a steady, if modest, income. Today, however, the air buzzed with an unusual energy, spurred on by the crowd gathering for an impromptu street art competition. The challenge was simple yet daunting: to capture the essence of the city in a single painting, with the promise of a generous prize, enough to change any struggling artist's fortunes overnight. Elena, with her usual quiet confidence, decided to participate, setting up her easel amongst a row of eager competitors. As she began to sketch, her focus was absolute, her hands moving deftly over the canvas, strokes blending the harsh lines of the city with the soft hues of an early autumn sky. But not everyone appreciated her methodical approach. A group of onlookers, led by a well-dressed woman whose laughter rang out clear and cutting, mocked Elena's traditional style. "Look at that," the woman sneered, pointing directly at Elena's canvas. "In a city of innovators, we still have painters who think it's 1950. How quaint!" Stung by the critique but determined not to show it, Elena pressed on, her brush strokes gaining momentum. As the afternoon waned, her painting came to life, a vivid portrayal of Central Park, blending reality with a touch of the fantastical, the skyline reflected in the glossy surface of a balloon held by a child in the foreground, symbolizing the city's dreams held in the delicate balance of its youth. The competition drew to a close, and the judges began their rounds, their murmurs of discussion ebbing and flowing around the park. Elena's mysterious critic continued to dominate the crowd's attention, her laughter now mingled with generous sips of champagne, seemingly oblivious to the tension mounting around the judging panel. As the judges neared Elena's painting, they paused, their expressions turning from casual interest to intense scrutiny. Whispers turned into excited chatter, and even the mocking onlooker's smile faltered as one of the judges announced Elena's work as the competition winner. The piece, they explained, perfectly captured the spirit of New York, a city where dreams were as tangible as the concrete underfoot, reflected through the innocence and potential of its youth. The crowd erupted in applause, some in genuine admiration, others in surprise. The woman who had laughed earlier approached Elena, her expression transformed from ridicule to awe. I had no idea," she stammered, her eyes locked on the painting. "This is remarkable. Truly." Elena, with a gracious yet reserved smile, simply nodded, accepting the accolades and the prize, a hefty check that meant more to her than just financial relief. It was validation, a testament to her enduring faith in the timeless appeal of genuine artistry, untouched by the fleeting judgments of trend chasers. In the days that followed, Elena's victory became the talk of the city, her painting featured in local newspapers, and even catching the attention of a renowned art gallery owner who offered to display her work and sponsor further projects. Her story, a blend of humble perseverance and unexpected triumph, resonated widely, reminding everyone that true talent often speaks in whispers, biding its time to be heard above the cacophony of doubt. As Elena's story rippled through the city, her newfound fame brought not only opportunities but also challenges that tested her resolve and humility. With her painting now displayed in a prestigious gallery, the quiet, methodical artist found herself thrust into a spotlight she had never sought. Invitations to exclusive events, interviews, and offers for commissioned works flooded in, each promising further acclaim but demanding a departure from the simplicity that had defined her life. At one such event, a high-profile auction, Elena's painting was set to be the centerpiece. The glittering crowd buzzed with anticipation, many eager to lay claim to the piece that had captured the city's heart. As the bidding started, figures soared higher than Elena had ever dared to dream. "Can you believe this?" a nearby spectator exclaimed, his voice a mixture of shock and excitement. "This painting might just break records tonight." But amidst the glitz, Elena felt a pang of alienation. The world around her seemed to spin too fast, its values skewed towards the superficial, where the worth of art was measured in dollar signs rather than the emotions it stirred. She watched, somewhat detached, as two bidders, a well-known art collector and a prominent businesswoman, escalated their bids aggressively. The fervor in their eyes was stark, reflecting not a love for the art but a desire to own the status it conferred. The climax of the auction was a blur. The final bid, a staggering amount, was called, and the gavel fell with a thud that seemed to echo Elena's conflicted emotions. The winner, the businesswoman, approached Elena afterward, her smile wide and victorious. "You're the talk of the town, Elena. Everyone wants a piece of your work now. Imagine what you could do with this kind of attention, huh?" Elena nodded politely, her mind racing. Was this what success looked like? A frenzy of numbers and transactions, where the soul of the artwork became secondary to its price tag. In the weeks that followed, Elena grappled with these questions. She found herself retreating more often to her corner in Central Park, where the familiar sights and sounds grounded her. One morning, as she painted quietly, a young girl approached, her eyes wide with genuine curiosity. "Did you really paint the one that sold for all that money?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. "Yes, I did," Elena replied, her brush pausing over the canvas. "Why do you still paint here then?" the girl wondered aloud. Elena smiled, a warm, heartfelt expression that reached her eyes. "Because this is where it means the most," she explained. "Here, it's not about how much money the painting brings. It's about sharing something beautiful with people who really see it, not just buy it." The girl nodded, a look of understanding crossing her young face. She stayed with Elena for the rest of the morning, watching as the painter worked, her strokes as confident and purposeful as ever. This simple, human connection rekindled Elena's love for her art, reminding her that true value lies not in the acclaim or the accolades, but in the moments of connection and the feelings an artist can evoke in the hearts of others. Elena's return to her roots in Central Park proved to be a turning point, not just in her career but in her personal journey as an artist. The fame and the frenzy of the auction had left her unsettled, but the quiet appreciation of passers-by, who often stopped not just to look but to really see her work, restored her belief in the power of art to touch lives. One crisp morning, as autumn leaves danced around her easel, Elena received a visit from an unexpected guest. It was the art gallery owner who had first displayed her winning painting. He watched her work for a while, his presence unobtrusive, before finally speaking. "Elena, your work has sparked quite the conversation about what art is truly worth. You've inspired a movement back to genuine artistry over commercial hype. How do you feel about hosting a series of workshops? We need to cultivate this appreciation in others." Elena considered his words carefully. Teaching had never been her ambition, but the thought of inspiring others to find their true expression, much like she had, was appealing. "I would like that," she said finally, "but on one condition. The workshops are open to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. Art shouldn't be exclusive." The gallery owner nodded in agreement, impressed by her conviction. "It's a deal," he affirmed, shaking her hand. The news of Elena's workshops spread quickly, attracting a diverse group of aspiring artists eager to learn from someone who valued the essence of art over its price tag. As the workshops commenced, Elena found a new kind of fulfillment. Her students ranged from young children to elderly hobbyists, each bringing their unique perspective and background to the canvas. Elena taught them to see the world through an artist's eyes, to notice the play of light and shadow, the depth of colors, and the emotion behind every scene. The final session of her workshop series coincided with the anniversary of her unexpected win at the street art competition. To celebrate, Elena organized a public exhibition of her students' work in Central Park, right where her own journey had taken a pivotal turn. The exhibition was a heartfelt affair, with each piece telling its own story, much like Elena's had. As the sun set on the day of the exhibition, casting long shadows over the assembled artwork and its admirers, Elena felt a profound sense of completion. She had come full circle, from seeking validation through competition to finding purpose in mentoring others. The exhibition closed with heartfelt applause and many emotional farewells. As the crowd dispersed, a young man approached Elena, his expression earnest. "Your work and your words have changed how I see the world," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for showing me that the real value of art is not in its price, but in the impact it has on people's hearts." Elena smiled, her eyes misty. "That's the true power of art," she replied softly. "And remember, it's not about where you display it, but how it speaks to those who see it." As the last of the visitors left and the night drew in, Elena packed up her paints and canvases, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She had found her answer, not in the applause of a crowded auction room, but in the quiet gratitude of those who truly understood what it meant to create. This, she realized, was her greatest success. The rain had been relentless all day, drumming against the windows of the small coffee shop where Elena had taken refuge with her sketchpad. She hadn't planned to stay so long, but the warm aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the faint hum of conversations made it hard to leave. Her pencil moved across the page as she sketched the blurry silhouettes of passers by rushing through the storm, their umbrellas like tiny, colorful shields against the downpour. Lost in her thoughts, she barely noticed the man who had been watching her from across the room. "Excuse me," his voice startled her, soft but confident. "That's incredible. Do you mind if I take a closer look?" Elena hesitated, her natural instinct to guard her work kicking in, but something about his genuine curiosity made her nod. The man leaned in, studying the unfinished sketch with a level of focus that almost unnerved her. "You have a way of capturing life in a way that feels alive," he said, almost to himself. "Do you sell your work?" She shook her head, a small, embarrassed smile creeping onto her face. "I've never really thought about it. It's just something I do for myself." His expression turned serious, his piercing eyes meeting hers. "That's a shame. You're sitting on something extraordinary, and you don't even realize it." The encounter lingered in Elena's mind long after the man left, his card tucked into her sketchbook. David Harrison, art collector. It sounded important, but Elena was skeptical. People said nice things all the time, but they rarely followed through. Still, the idea of her work being seen, truly seen, was tempting. Days passed, and curiosity got the better of her. She decided to call the number on the card, half expecting it to lead nowhere. To her surprise, David answered immediately, his voice warm and welcoming. Within a week, she found herself standing in his private gallery, her paintings arranged in a makeshift display. The room was stark and silent, each piece illuminated under soft, flattering lights. It felt surreal. As David walked through the collection, nodding thoughtfully, Elena's nerves began to unravel. What if her work wasn't good enough? What if he'd overestimated her talent? But then he turned to her, a broad smile breaking across his face. "You have no idea how rare this is," he said. "People are going to fall in love with your art." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. David arranged a small exhibition, inviting critics, collectors, and friends. Elena stood in the corner, clutching a glass of water as strangers admired her work, their words of praise blending into a symphony of validation. For the first time in her life, she felt like an artist, not just someone who painted in her spare time. But the most unexpected moment came at the end of the night, when an older woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "This piece," she said, pointing to a painting of a child holding a balloon against a stormy sky, "it reminded me of my grandson. He passed away last year, and this, it brought him back, if only for a moment." Elena was speechless. the woman's words cutting through the noise of the evening like a blade. She realized then that her art wasn't just about her. It was about the stories it told, the memories it evoked, and the way it connected people in ways words couldn't. As the night ended and the gallery emptied, Elena sat quietly in the now empty space, staring at her work with a mixture of pride and humility. For the first time, she understood what David had seen in her all along, her ability to make people feel. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift her art could give. Elena never expected a single moment to shift her entire life, but it happened on an otherwise unremarkable afternoon. She was sitting at her usual spot in the park, her easel propped up and her brushes scattered across the worn wooden bench beside her. The sun was warm on her face, and the chatter of nearby families filled the air. She had just begun painting a scene of children chasing bubbles when a man with a weathered face and a tattered coat approached her. "Beautiful work," he said, his voice raspy but kind. Elena glanced up, offering a polite smile before returning her focus to the canvas. She was used to passers-by commenting on her work, most of them with fleeting curiosity. But this man lingered, his eyes scanning the painting with an intensity that made her pause. "You've captured something special here," he continued, his tone earnest. "Do you sell your paintings?" Elena hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Not really," she admitted. "I just paint for myself." The man nodded thoughtfully, his gaze still fixed on the canvas. "I used to paint," he said quietly, "a long time ago, before life took me somewhere else." His words hung in the air, and Elena felt a pang of curiosity mixed with empathy. She wanted to ask more, but before she could, he turned and walked away, his footsteps fading into the noise of the park. Something about the encounter stayed with her, though, and she found herself looking for him in the days that followed. A week later he returned, this time carrying a small, weathered sketchbook. He handed it to her without a word, his hands trembling slightly. Inside were pages of intricate, breathtaking drawings, scenes of nature, portraits filled with emotion, and abstract pieces that seemed to tell stories of their own. Elena was stunned. "These are incredible," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. He smiled faintly, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "They don't matter any more," he said. "No one cares about the work of a man who's lost everything." Elena felt a lump in her throat. "That's not true," she said firmly. "Art always matters. You've created something beautiful, and that's worth everything." The conversation marked the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Over the weeks, the man, whose name was Henry, shared pieces of his story. He had once been a celebrated artist, his work displayed in galleries and admired by many. But personal tragedy and a series of unfortunate events had left him destitute, his art forgotten. Determined to help, Elena proposed an idea. "Let's hold an exhibition," she said one day, her eyes bright with determination. "Not for fame or money, but to remind people of the beauty you've created." Henry was hesitant, but Elena's enthusiasm was infectious. Together they worked tirelessly, restoring his old pieces and creating new ones. Elena even contributed some of her own paintings, blending their styles into a cohesive collection. They transformed her small apartment into a makeshift studio, their days filled with laughter, stories, and the comforting rhythm of creation. When the exhibition day arrived, Elena was a bundle of nerves. They had rented a modest community hall, and she worried no one would come. But as the evening unfolded, the room began to fill. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers drawn in by the promise of art that spoke to the soul. The response was overwhelming. People marveled at Henry's work, their admiration reigniting a spark in his eyes that had long been extinguished. Elena watched from the corner, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. This wasn't just about showcasing art. It was about giving someone a second chance, about reminding the world, and Henry, that every story, no matter how broken, has value. As the night drew to a close, Henry stood before the crowd, his voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you," he said, his eyes glistening, "for seeing me, for reminding me that it's never too late to create something meaningful." Elena's chest tightened as the room erupted in applause. In that moment, she knew that this was the true power of art, not just to capture beauty, but to heal, to connect, and to inspire. And as Henry turned to her with a grateful smile, she realized that the simple act of believing in someone could change not just their life, but yours too.